Welcome to the Business Growth Academy podcast. I'm Jen Richardson, I'm your host. But before I get into the specific topics I'm going to be covering on this podcast, so it'll be things like cash flow, profit, looking at your margins, pricing, tax, growth, and of course the pressure that comes with running a business. I wanted to start with a really simple conversation. So I wanted to start with who I am, what matters to me, why I'm doing this podcast, and of course, why I care so much about small business owners understanding their numbers. So if we haven't met, as I said, I'm Jen Richardson. I'm the founder of Business Growth Academy and of course 123 Financial Group. And the work that I do is really centered around helping small business owners, especially the trades and service-based businesses. And I want those businesses to get more clarity, more control about their business, and of course, more growth in their business. Because what I see all the time is this. There are so many good business owners out there who are hardworking. They're capable business owners. They're committed to their business and they're doing everything they can to make their business work. Of course, they're busy. They've got work coming in. They've got lots of clients. They've got staff that they're looking after. And they've got money moving through their business. But underneath all of that, what I see is a lot of stressed business owners. And especially at the moment with all our costs going up, the inflation keeps rising, which means our material costs are going up and everything about running our business is increasing. So they're not always sure about what the numbers are saying. And, you can be really good at your business, but not necessarily good at running a business. They don't always feel like they're in control because they spend most of their time making sure that their client or their customer is looked after and forgetting about their own business. They're quite often making decisions without enough visibility on their numbers to know whether they're making the right decisions. And a lot of time they're carrying pressure that no one else really sees. So I have lots of business owners that tell me they wake up in the middle of the night worrying about how they're going to do wages next week or worrying about what growth is coming, or they've got no quotes in at the moment, so they're not quite sure what work they've got coming up. And this all matters to me because I think too many business owners are made to feel like if they're busy enough, then eventually everything will be fine. And of course, we know that is not true, and it's not how business should work. So being busy does not mean that you're profitable. Revenue or income is not the same as profit, of course, and a profitable business does not always mean a wealthy owner. And you know what? This isn't a small issue because as of June 2025, there were just over 2.7 million businesses actively trading in Australia. And 97.3% of them were actually small businesses. So when we talk about small business pressure, we're talking about a huge part of the economy and a huge number of people trying to make this work every day. And that's a really big part of why I wanted to create this podcast. I mean, we're all busy. We don't always have the time to get in and sit with our accountant to go over our books or anything like that. A podcast is a great way for you to learn from somebody who has the expertise. And it's a great way for you to find out how to be better at running your business without dedicating a lot of time to sitting in front of somebody or trying to understand it. A podcast also allows you to go back and listen to something later if you think you haven't quite got it. So this podcast is going to be about what you as small business owners want from me as an educator for you, as somebody that can pass on knowledge and somebody that can help you understand how to make your business work better for you. Because I want small business owners to hear honest conversation about what is really going on in business. I want this to be a really practical podcast. So if you've got anything that you want me to cover or any questions that you may have, please send in via wherever you're watching or listening to this, because I don't want this to be just noise out into the market. I want it to be a really helpful podcast where you can get some guidance without it costing you a fortune and costing you in time. And so I want this podcast to be really useful, and I want it to feel like someone is finally explaining the financial side of business in a way that actually makes sense to you as a business owner. So I touched briefly about who I am. So I am the founder of 123 Financial Group, and it's a business that I started back in 2006, or I really started it earlier than that, but it was just from my home back then. I decided when I was going to have children that I didn't want to go back into the corporate world. I'd been a manager at a firm that was nationally founded. It was very big, and I found it frustrating that they didn't really have a need to look after small businesses, because when you're a big accounting firm, you've got lots of overheads, of course, and you need to recover costs from your clients. I mean, we all have to do that. And so I saw a need for very small businesses to get guidance at an affordable price. I also did a lot with individual taxpayers. And so I founded my business from home. I had 3 small babies, and I just wanted to be able to provide value for those small businesses. I built up a lot of clients in the building construction industry because at the time my husband was a builder. And so the conversations that were happening on building sites that he was on, and so I got a lot of trades people come to me. And I still work mostly with the trade businesses, although I do have a lot of service-based business as well. And so I want to always be working closely with small business owners because for me, I'm passionate about that. I am a small business owner myself. I'm not going to lie, there's times that I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and think, oh my God, I haven't got enough. I know I need to look at my cash flow because the next couple of months is going to be quiet for me, or I've got too much work coming in the next couple of months. I need to schedule that well. And so I am lucky because with the work that I do, running my own business is the same as running the business. For anybody, let's say you're a trade, if you're a plumber, you may be a very good plumber, but you accidentally became a business owner. And so you have to have 2 different trades. You have to have the trade of being whatever it is that you are, but you also have to have the trade of being a business owner. And I always say as accountants, we're really lucky because they are the same thing. When I'm trying to be an accountant to my clients, I'm looking at business, I'm looking at how they can increase their profits, their cash flow, looking at their margins. And it's the same thing that I do with my own business. So I don't have to have 2 businesses like you guys do. And I always say, I couldn't do my own plumbing or my own electrical work or anything like that. So I don't expect any of my clients to have as much knowledge about running their business as I do because, it's what I do. So I want my small business owners to see the real numbers behind the business because that puts a lot of pressure on you emotionally with your business. And so it is important that as business owners, you can learn to look at the key numbers you need to do. I mean, you don't need to be down in the trenches every day looking at your business, but there should be some key figures that you want to look at. It is important that you have control over your business, and this is what makes it important for me, is that ownership of a small business can be really isolating. If you're trying to run a business and you don't know where to look for the numbers, you're not quite sure what you need to do, you don't know where to turn to except for your accountant. And for a lot of small business owners, they don't have the time between 8:30 and 5 when their accountants are there because they're too busy looking after their own clients. There's also the added pressure of, do I want to spend more money, which every time I ring my accountant, they cost me more. So quite often we find that a lot of small business owners try to do it the best they can, and they think if they're reconciling their bank accounts and everything's there, then that's great. But the problem with not looking at your numbers on a day-to-day basis is you're making decisions about your business from old figures. So it is important that you do understand your business. And, we work with a lot of our business owners just to come up with 3 or 4 what we call KPIs, so key performance indicators. And if you can know what those 3 or 4 figures are on a day-to-day basis or a month-to-month basis, then you're making informed decisions. So I want you to make sure that you don't just see spreadsheets and reports because I see the stress and the pressure that so many small business owners are under and the weight that people are carrying when they don't feel in control of their business. I mean, I could ask any of my business owners, what's your profit? What's your profit margin? What's your gross income? What's your projections for the next 3 or 4 months? Most business owners won't know those. And that's where small business owners get behind, the larger businesses that have finance departments. And so coming up with those 3 or 4 key performance indicators is a really important thing because that will give you the control over your business, but it also gives you the ability to make informed decisions. So why does this matter to me? Well, as I said, I have a small business myself, so I see the pressures. I live those pressures every day. I have the added advantage over most people in that I don't feel overwhelmed by my numbers, where a lot of business owners that I talk to will just, these are foreign things, looking at financials and business figures and everything like that. You're very good at your trade, but the business side can be overwhelming. I also care about making the financial side of business feel more understandable and less intimidating, because usually we are overwhelmed by something that we don't understand. So I also believe that good people deserve good businesses, and every business owner I know is working hard and they're under the constant pressure, and you're not quite sure what steps to take to improve the business, or I'll look at it all next week, or I'll have a meeting with the accountant, as soon as things quieten down. And we then find that we're just doing the same thing over and over again. I also want owners to have a business that supports their life, not one that drains it. So, when we go into business, we have the idea that we're doing that because it will give us more money, it will give us freedom, it will allow us to work when we want to work. And of course, when we get into business, we find out that that's not the case. We generally earn, some people earn good money, don't get me wrong, but some people are earning the same amount of money that they could earn working wages for people. And I've seen lots of business owners over the years that have just went, running a business is too hard. I might as well go and work for someone else where I go home at 4 o'clock and I don't have to worry about anything. And I really want the business owners to understand honestly what their business is doing, because clarity and practical support is what's important to me. But I also want to talk to you honestly about your business, because what matters to me is to help business owners get to the point where they're not constantly guessing or reacting instead of, and carrying the stress of financial in being in business. And so quite often we, as small business owners, carry that stress on our own. We don't want to talk to our partner about it. We've got no business partner to talk about. And as I said, it can impact lots of things in our lives. So we become stressful. We don't engage with our family because we're constantly thinking about what needs to get done in the business. But also, waking up in the middle of the night, not sleeping well, and all the things that come with being under stress. So I started, as I said, 123 Financial Group because coming from a big firm where I saw that they were more directed towards the medium or the larger businesses, I saw a gap in the understanding of small businesses. So, the work for me was so much more than just the tax or the compliance side. I wanted business owners to understand their business, understand how important it is to do, 12 monthly projections of where we're going to be. If you want to bring on a staff member, let's look at what that looks like in 12 months' time as far as income goes. Because so many small business owners are making what I call gut decisions. I think I'm so busy, I need to get somebody else to come in. Well, it only makes sense to get somebody else to come into your business if that person is going to cover their workload and costs, because if they're not, all you're doing is working more for everybody else. So I wanted all my business owners to understand how important cash flow is, how important profit is, the pricing, because there is an art to pricing, and it is not just a stab in the dark or the guy down the road's charging that, so I'll match what he's matching. And in decision making, because decision making and financial confidence are so linked And, I see lots of small business owners that will just be making decisions because that's what they feel is right, not working from financial statements. And financial statements that your accountant gives you is great, but by the time you get those, it's past the ability to make decisions. So what we do with our bookkeeping clients, for example, is every month they get a financial statement. They get their profit and loss statement, they get their cash flow statement, they get their balance sheet, because that is where they can start to make informed decisions, not decisions of something that happened 18 months ago, because financial statements are there to, well, the ones that your accountant is doing anyway, are there to do compliance. It's to do a tax return. But if you're doing a set of financial statements that ended the 30th of June and you're doing your tax return in March the following year, those financial statements are almost 2 years old because the financial year started the July the year before. So it is important that you have up-to-date financial statements, and you can do that yourself once you're taught how to do it. So I help owners see what is actually going on in their business and to make those stronger decisions with more clarity and, of course, with more control. So the goal is not just to keep the business running, but to help it become healthier and more sustainable. So at 123 Financial Group, we work really about helping small business owners understand what their numbers are trying to tell them, because I always say, your financial statements are trying to tell you something. It's just whether you're listening to what they're going to tell you. So it's about showing you how to come up with making better choices, better decisions, and, what you can do to run your business better. So Business Growth Academy is the podcast that you're listening to. It's also going to be in the future a educational platform that I'm going to do where people can do small courses or training or be involved in things. So that's in the future. But for now, Business Growth Academy exists because, as I said, I wanted a lot of business owners to get advice, and I want to be able to help you with those decisions that you need to do. So it's about education. It's about support and guidance and a way to keep you learning how to run your business owners, because I think it's important that you understand that running a business, you don't have to figure it out on your own. There is a lot of help if you know where to turn. And, it's a bit like when you were doing your trade, for example, if you're a tradie, you didn't know how to be a carpenter, a builder, a plumber, or an electrician in that first week or so. It was a 4-year apprenticeship. You had tradespeople there to show you, people to ask questions. And so that's what Business Growth Academy is about. It's about being the place where you can come and get some guidance, get some help, and learn the trade of running your business better. I'm going to put up lots of practical tools. There'll be support there for you. I'll give you any worksheets or anything that will help you along the way. But it is mainly here to create a space for business owners who want to grow with more confidence and stronger foundations. And it's about helping small business owners realise that they're not just exhausted workers. So Business Growth Academy is important to me because I know that business owners don't just need answers. You need support, you need guidance, and you need a place to keep learning as your business grows. So my podcast is really here, and we're going to talk nothing but small businesses. So it's here to talk about what is real, what's practical and useful for you as a business owner. So it's not about surface level things. Each episode is going to be covering one topic and one topic only. And I'm doing that because what I want to make sure is that it's not just, a fluffy over the, just the high level of things. I want to be able to dig into what you need to do on that specific topic. As I said at the start of this intro podcast, if you have anything that you want me to give you an understanding of, reach out. I'm more than happy to write a podcast on anything that you want because, as I said, this is a podcast for you as small business owners, not me just to sit here and talk about what I think you want. So if you are listening to this podcast and you think that it is something that you are going to get some help from, I want you to know that you are seen, you're heard, and I want to equip you with some real life help. So it's really about me helping you make sense of what's happening in your business so that you can stop just pushing through and start making stronger decisions. And the reason, as I said, this matters so much to me is because small business is not some side conversation in Australia. Small businesses employ more than 5 million people, which is 39% of the workforce. And that was, only 12 months ago. So if small business owners don't survive, the ripple effect for Australia and all the employees is it's huge. So, we're going to talk about cash flow pressure. As I said, margins, profit, pricing, and the dangers of undercharging. I'll also talk a little bit about tax and, budgets are coming up soon, how that's going to impact on you and your business. But I'm also going to dig deep into the emotional side of running a business, how you can feel burnt out, the things that are creating that. So we're going to cover over a lot of stuff that actually affects how you feel about your business and how you run your business. As I said, it's not theory, and it's just talking about the real pressures that show up on day-to-day life. So that's enough of the intro. Hopefully that helps you with whether this podcast is something that will help you be better at your business. So I guess from here, we're going to jump into our real podcast. We've got an episode, I think, thinking back to my timetable, we use something called the profit engine here, which will talk about that framework and why that exists and what I've done to get that to help your businesses. So rambling on a little bit, which I can do sometimes. Anyway, that's enough a little bit about who I am, why I'm starting this podcast, and what I think it can be for you. So thanks for listening. If you think this is something that is going to help you, make sure you hit subscribe so you get told when the new episodes land. And as I said, if you've got any questions or anything, reach out to me. So that's it. Have a great week, and I will see you in episode 1 of Business Growth Academy very soon.